PC doesn't have a connection going to it, just to make sure. Hello, everybody. I hope we are live. I am going to check really quickly. It says live on my phone here. Um, Sorry, I'm just waiting 1 second. Can everybody hear me? You are? I'm live? Yay. Okay, I don't see any video popping up. Kyle, can you see anything?
Yes, sir. You're live.
I am? Okay, awesome. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Let me go pull up this window really quickly. We are in the after lunch portion of our session, so from 12:30 to 2:30 today, we'll be talking to you. First, we have the JCPS Reentry Addressing Knowledge Gaps session coming up. That's with Jenny Aberly and Lacey Eccles, and I'm not going to waste any more of their time. I'm going to let them take it away.
Hi, everyone. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Then you're going to tell me to turn my closed captions on.
Yes, I am.
And they should be on. Yep, they're on. All right, I think we're ready to go. So, welcome to Addressing Knowledge Gaps, Planning for Reentry. My name is Lacey Eccles, and I am the K-12 Science Lead. And my partner in crime today, my much better half, is Jenny Aberly, who is the high school ELA lead. So this plan was rolled out at the end of the 1920 school year, and we're going to be revisiting it today to help propel us into the next 2 weeks of work that we have before school starts. So our purpose today is to continue thinking about the impact remote learning has had on our students and how you, as instructional leaders, can do this important work. So we know this is going to be, to say the least, a very unique beginning of a school year with definitely new norms and probably some new challenges and some new gaps. And so we need to plan. So this slide reminds us of the vision for this work. The work is centered around teacher reflection and teacher collaboration, both vertical and horizontal. You can probably count on many sets of hands the number of times that Jenny and I during this 30 minutes will say vertical and horizontal collaboration. When you get to 10, yell bingo. Where teachers are making intentional instructional choices. We're shifting from that mindset of remediation and coverage to holistic learning progressions and experiences. And we need to start asking ourselves, how can I scaffold up? How can I spiral in? And how can I deepen learning? And as always, all of this is centered around that student experience and planning with the student in mind. So constantly thinking as you're making decisions, what does this look like from a student's perspective? Here's a timeline of the work that's been done in regards to planning for this academic reentry. And we're currently right here, where the big arrow is, at the fall PLC work stage, where teachers are working together, here we go, both horizontally and vertically, to make intentional instructional choices. You'll notice over here, Module 3 is a new module that has just been released by KDE, and it's centered around responding to reentry. So once we've made this great plan and we start school, how are we going to respond to what we see once we get there? And that's through the use of formative assessments that will drive our future instructional decisions. Later in the presentation, we will look at a slide with links to all of those resources. And so we encourage your school to continue thinking and engaging in this work together and considering who in your building is best equipped to lead this work. I'm going to pass the baton over to Jenny to kind of dive a little bit deeper into what that, here we go, vertical and horizontal collaboration might look like.
Great. Thanks, Lacey. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is a review of what we covered last spring. I'm not sure what happened, but Lacey, I'm not seeing your screen anymore. there we go. Well, I see it on the bottom, but not my big screen. Okay, I don't need to see it. I can move forward. So this is a snapshot of the Module 2 planning for reentry. Last spring, we talked about these modules that teachers could use to start planning for reentry into the school year. Starting out individually, then working within PLCs, and then working, wait for it, horizontally and vertically. So this slide is just a snapshot of that. Module 2 and 3 actions that include teacher reflection, PLC work, and schools collaborating in vertical teams. But action item 1 is what we hope teachers did over the summer. And that is where you reflected independently on what was covered and taught last year, and maybe what didn't get covered or taught or learned last year. So you could figure out where those gaps were of learning, so that you can think about a student-centered reentry for this school year. And then our hopes are that teachers are working on action item 2 and action item 3 in these 2 weeks before we have students back again. And action item 2 is gathering that individual reflection from action item 1, and then working together with your grade level PLCs or those course content teams, and identifying potential opportunities for scaffolding the learning, for spiraling in the learning, for identify those essential standards, those skills, aligned to Kentucky academic standards and our curriculum frameworks for action item 3, which is making a plan, an instructional plan for this year. So we introduced all 3 action items in the spring, encouraged you to do action item 1 to prepare for 2 and 3 to happen right now. If you didn't do action item 1 in the spring, it is okay. You can still do that work. Here are the resources that are available for that. We recommend the individual copy and guidance documents. Those are templates for you to use for action item 1. There's a template for action item 2 and for action item 3, and I'll show you some screenshots of those here in a minute. You also need the JCPS curriculum frameworks and your Kentucky academic standards for whatever your content area is. As you're doing this work, please reach out to your academic instructional coaches in the building. Reach out to the district leads, the district coaches, the deeper learning resource teachers. We're all here to help support you in this work. So if you have questions about having to move forward, please reach out and let us help you. I'm going to dig real quickly into action item 1. That was what we were hoping that teachers would do over the summer in terms of individual reflection on identifying what was taught and learned and where those potential learning gaps might be. So in order to do that, you'll want to use last year's instructional plans to see what you did. And then there are 3 columns in the template there, and you can see there's a link where it says table 1 at the top that will take you to this. And so we're asking you to think about what were the learning opportunities that happened prior to NTI, so like from August until mid-March. Then what were those learning opportunities, standards, concepts, skills that were taught during NTI? And for many of us, it was just hold your place, steady ground. Not a whole lot of new instruction happened, so there were probably some gaps there. And then column 3 is what you're identifying what those missed learning opportunities were during NTI. So to help you figure out, like, what did my kids miss last year? An example would be this. If a teacher taught argument last year, they wouldn't just list argument in either column 1 or 2. They need to identify the specific content, concepts, and skills within argument to know what was taught and learned and what wasn't. So example, around argument, we've got claims, validity, reasoning, evidence, false statement, counterclaims. Identify within that what was taught and what wasn't taught last year. Or if you're a math teacher, and you had fractions, don't just list fractions, but specifically break it down into the content, concepts, and skills that were part of that. That'll make it easier in action item 2 to identify those next steps. So let's move on to action item 2. This action item is where teachers bring their work from action item 1 to their PLCs, and we start to talk together about what did we teach, what was missed. In the table for action item 2, you will see something referred to as pertinent learning and essential standards. Don't get hung up on that language. Pertinent learning, just think about that as the nice to know. This is what we want kids to know. But if you think about essential standards, that is the need to know. In many content areas or disciplines, that has been decided or recommended to you about what those essential standards might be. But as a PLC, you might want to look at that document and add to or change that to help identify what are the need to knows. Because the truth be told, this year, we're going to be teaching and catching up kids from last year's standards in addition to this year's. So we have got to be real intentional about narrowing our focus. And there might be things that we have taught in the past that we love to teach because it's just meaningful to us, but maybe we just don't have time for that this year because it's not essential. So that's going to be a real important into our planning. So as you think about action item 2, there are lots of resources for you. And those are here and they're listed and they're linked. So you'll definitely want to have your Kentucky academic standards for reading and writing, math, social studies, and science. You'll want to have access to our JCPS curriculum frameworks, the teacher backpack, and the student backpack is the success skills. So those are all links that are right there for you. And quickly, because we're talking about different content areas, I want to show you why accessing the KDE documents is helpful. For example, here is a screenshot from a progression page for ELA. When you look at this view, it shows you right in the middle. I'm a 4th grade teacher looking at standard 6, and I can see what that standard is. But if I look at to the left of it, I can see what that was in 3rd grade. If I look to the right of it, I can see what that should be in 5th grade. So it shows me a progression of the year before and after. If I'm a math teacher, this is what my screenshot will look like. When you look at the standards page from KDE, what we notice as we're talking about progressions or coherence statements is that there are standards listed in the mathematical practices, but under the clarifications column is where you'll see the coherence for math. And that coherence allows for vertical conversations around mathematics and for vertical and horizontal conversations as well. The curriculum frameworks provide more detail in mathematics on the information from the KDE page. So you'll want to make sure you're looking at both of those. And then also Achieve the Core is another great resource that provides a coherence map that can utilize to scaffold that learning. In social studies, there's a shot of the curriculum framework, but those progressions are listed on an appendix that can be accessed on the link in the frameworks. You can see by looking at the table of contents for social studies that there's a lot in there. And it would be easier to look at the progressions in a particular disciplinary strand or by grade level. Additionally, seeing those progressions of standards per unit within the curriculum frameworks will lead social studies teachers to specific inquiry and disciplinary standards. And then finally, for you science teachers, here's a snapshot of science. The progressions are explained through each of the 3 dimensions and can be located in the appendices of the standards, and they're also in our curriculum frameworks. Something important to think about for science is that those concepts don't necessarily go sequentially from one grade to another. Students might see a concept in one year, but then not see that concept again in the next grade, but rather 2 grades ahead. So that's an important thing to note for science teachers. So now that we've looked at those resources for completing action item 2, let's review it a little more closely. So this is where those grade level PLCs or course content teams are going to come together and work through what teachers listed in table 1 and analyze it for alignment to the Kentucky academic standards for their grade level. So in PLCs, teachers can utilize the progression and coherence statements to determine where to begin addressing those missed learning opportunities. That's going to be so important. So they're going to bring their individual work and they're going to start determining what was pertinent and which was nice to know versus what's essential and need to know for this school year. In some disciplines, again, those essential standards have been recommended for teachers and you can lean in on that. Finally, and this is a really important part of this step, is once you've identified those pertinent and essential standards, provide a bit of a rationale there on the right, a narrative to kind of explain what was happened in the classroom. Like maybe you started to get to something, but you never got to finish it. That's going to be really important for those horizontal and vertical conversations, so that if I'm a 4th grade teacher, my 5th grade teacher can get a little better understanding of what they need to cover because what was missed. Finally, action item 3, once PLC teams have done that work, it's about consolidating that work in action items 1 and 2 to figure out what's the course for this school year. What's that instructional plan going to be? Lacey, I'm going to let you take over and explain this one.
Absolutely. You guys are getting closer to bingo. Lots of vertical and horizontal. All right, so action item 3, like Jenny said, is taking all that hard work you've done in action items 1 and 2 and actually making a plan. So now that we know all these things, what's the plan? And so this table represents what kind of has to go into that instructional plan. So you'll see right here, this first column, this is where I'm pulling this information from those vertical conversations that I had. So I'm going to take the standards and concepts that I learned. Let's say I'm a 3rd grade teacher. When I had conversations with that 4th grade team, I'm going to take those and drop those in. So this is what wasn't achieved, wasn't covered. Then I'm going to take here, and in the second column, I'm going to include all the current grade level standards, concepts, and or skills that need to be taught this year. So those 2 columns represent kind of all of the standards, concepts, and skills that I have to cover for this coming up school year. That takes us down to that bottom section. So once you've listed the standards, concepts, and skills, the bottom section is the plan. So in that bottom section, you're going to draft an adjusted plan. And so some considerations that you might want to think about are, where might those missing standards, concepts, and skills best fit? So should there be some front loading and maybe some standalone units? Or can I embed some of these missed opportunities into existing units? Or is it some kind of combination of all the 3? And then, like Jenny had mentioned earlier, where can I tighten up my existing instructional plan to make time for those missed opportunities, right? Time is a hot commodity right now, y'all. And so some additional considerations that might make this process a little easier is to create one master copy of Table 3 so that the whole PLC and content team can kind of share in that. And it's in a Google Doc, so that'll be super easy. PLC and team consensus should be reached on any content, concepts, and or skills placed in this table. And then, as we always should be considering, how could we integrate our deeper learning opportunities and the success skills to help prepare our students? So once you have done an amazing job in PLCs, both horizontal and vertical, to create that instructional plan for this upcoming school year, you'll be ready for Module 3. And like I mentioned earlier, module 3 is responding to reentry. So we have a plan, kiddos have showed up, and we're implementing our plan. And now how are we going to respond to that implementation? And so KDE has done a great job at creating a 3-part series about responding to reentry. And so on this slide, you will see a link to a video of KDE going through the slide deck, as well as the slide deck. And there's also a link right here in the bottom just to the KDE Academic Reentry website, because they have some useful additional resources that you might want to comb through. Passing the baton to Jenny.
All right, so I'm going to bring us home. So this year, we are going to continue to provide support to you, professional learning through the AICs, through PLCs, content-specific professional learning opportunities. I know that this week and next week, I'm spending some time with a particular school to support them in their steps in this work. So reach out to us. We're here to help support that throughout the school year. So there are those 3 action items for this module. And so that is the what to do, but there are some considerations for coherence around this work that you also need to be thinking of. So who's going to lead the work within the PLCs, within those support teams? Identify who will lead the work within those levels. Also think about space. I mean, we know that it has to be virtual, but think about how we're going to communicate the materials and provide those documents, those templates to teachers for completing. And then when is this going to happen? We're hoping that teachers did work over the summer, but in these next 2 weeks, we have teacher work days. And when within those teacher work days might there be some time to get this front loading work done? And then also the work that needs to continue throughout this school year. How are you going to make sure the information from those tables get shared up to the next PLC? Is there a process for that? When you think about those vertical conversations, will it be the 10th grade PLC, everyone talking to everyone in the 11th grade PLC? Or will it just be one the lead from each PLC communicating with each other? So how are you going to communicate where those gaps are? And then what's the plan for incorporating the learning? Are you going to front load? Are you going to embed it? Or is it going to be some combination of that? I think it really depends on what the standard or the skill is and how that happens. And then in terms of leadership, who's going to lead the work? Is it going to be the principal, assistant principal, coach? Is that work going to look the same school-wide, or is that going to be different according to PLCs and content teams? Finally, something that would be really helpful for teachers who are entering in this work is to see some sample reentry planning documents. And in this slide, we have samples for all grade levels, for all content areas. These are not perfect. They are just samples. They are not meant to be the only way, and they are not meant to be inclusive of everything. They're samples for you to see a little bit for how this might look within your school. Finally, we want to thank you for your time to learn how to best meet the needs of our students going into this next school year, and let you know that as a curriculum design and learning and innovation team, we are here to support you in this work. You can reach out to your leads, you can reach out to your coaches and resource teachers here at the district level and at the school level, and we will be here to help you along the way.
Well, Jenny and Lacey, that was great. Thank you so much. I didn't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody does have any questions, if you want to type those in there now for us, that'd be awesome. And remember, today you can find this video after this stream is over at, 3 o'clock, I believe, yes? 2:30. This video will be on there, and you can go ahead and have the power of pause to watch that again. So, again, Lacey and Jenny, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
We appreciate you guys so much for putting this together and having this channel. We know it's a ton of work, and so I speak for the people we appreciate you guys as well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you again on Wednesday.
Yes, see you then.
That's right, we will.
All
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you both. Bye.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, thank you for continuing to tune in with us. We have 450 people on our channel right now. That is awesome. That is our peak for the day and the highest we've had in a long time. So thank you all for tuning in. We are super excited. I keep looking over. I have the stream up on my phone over here. So while we're waiting for our next presenters to get on in, let's talk about where you can find all this information. If you go to jcps.me/nti and you click on the Teacher Toolkit, it will take you here, and you can click on the Virtual Professional Learning Schedule, and that will take you to our schedule right here. You can see this is the week of August 10th. We just went through the re-entry addressing knowledge gaps. If you click there, you can see that their presentation is available for you to go back and look through. And like I said, all of these sessions will be recorded. You can find the big chunk of them today after we're done. If you just look for the same title that we have here, which will be August 10th afternoon live, and then throughout the week, I will be the one breaking these up and posting them back into our YouTube channel for you to view one session at a time if you would so like. So it looks like coming up next we have Kathleen Receiver and Susan Price coming to talk about the teacher backpack, although I think I just saw Kathleen got in there now, and there's Susan. Awesome. Welcome. How are you ladies doing today?
Hey, Matt. Doing great.
Good. We have 4 minutes left until we get started, so I will try to...
Start early, please.
Start early?
No.
We won't. So I'm going to go through and talk about our Twitter page. So remember, please tweet at us. Tweet all the awesome things you're learning about and doing with your fellow teachers, with your admins, and eventually with your students as we go into NTI 2.0 here in a couple weeks. Tweet at us at JCPSDigIn. That is for digital innovation. And when you do tweet at us, use the hashtag JCPSDigIn as well. We love to see and share all the awesome things that you all are doing out there. Hey, it sounds like the rain went away. That's fantastic. So we have Kathleen and Susan talking to us about the teacher backpack in a minute. Coming up next, you'll be with us for 2 sessions in a row. We'll have Carmen Coleman and Suzanne Kramer joining us as well to talk about 5 basics. And then we will end today with Ryan New and Suzanne Kramer talking about standards, deconstruction, and unit planning. And then tomorrow, we have a big day. That is our recommended core digital tools. So the JCPS Dig In team with some special guests will be going through and talking about the recommended tools for NTI 2.0, which are Google Classroom, Google Meet, Screencastify, Jamboard, Read and Write, and then going back and looking at how we can do breakout rooms. Our newest team member, Rebecca Reynolds, will be doing that. She's the new Zone 1 Digital Innovation Leader on the instructional side. And then we'll also have Sarah Brock and Katie Wolf talking about Jamboard for instruction after Elaine and I introduce that Jamboard for interactive whiteboard. Kathleen, did I miss anything? I feel like I should say something, but I don't know what I missed.
I think you got it. I think that's a great lineup and a bunch of exciting information. Did you miss anything about Screencastify? Did you talk about that?
I didn't say anything about it. Should I?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, since we are talking about Screencastify, we now have Screencastify Unlimited for every teacher in our district, which is going to be huge. So definitely turn in tomorrow at 12:30 as we have 2 of our awesome technical digital innovation leaders, Danielle Washburn and Stephen Durham, talking about how to use Screencastify for asynchronous learning, and that is going to be awesome. So please definitely make sure you tune into that.
I think they're on. They just tweeted out a 1-pager about it as well. So jump on Twitter and look at that too. So
yes, we actually maybe have. Actually, I don't see it. You see Jim Unger's beautiful face on Twitter a few times though. Alrighty, it is 12:59. So Kathleen and Susan, I'm going to let you all take it away. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us. I'm going to go ahead, Susan, and get my screen ready here. Do a little closed captioning. Turn it on. That would help. All right, we should be good to go, Matt.
All right, have
Okay.
at it.
So Susan and I are excited to be here today. First, my name is Kathleen Receiver, and I'm one of the digital innovation leaders for JCPS with the 32 Zone 2 crew schools. So shout out to any of the Zone 2 crew teachers that are in the chat today. Thanks for being here. And Susan, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Susan Price. I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum Design and Learning Innovation. So all of the wonderful instructional leads and coaches and deeper learning team all share our space in CDLI. So I know we have some of those folks out this afternoon and just appreciate that they are here. So welcome to everyone. We hope that during this session you will learn a little bit more about our one-stop shop called the Teacher Backpack.
Yes. So the teacher backpack. You want to talk about the purpose too, Susan?
Yeah. So last year, we realized that teachers needed one place to go that has resources that they need for curriculum planning, all of our systems work. And so we created a teacher backpack. So basically the teacher backpack is just to provide foundational resources that are essential for teachers at each grade level and course in one place, so that you don't have to go to like 3 or 4 different places to click, to find a framework, to find a resource for deeper learning. You have everything in one place. Again, it's not intended to include every resource a teacher might want to use, but instead those that every teacher should use at a minimum. Kathleen?
All right. So one of the important things is, especially maybe for new teachers that aren't aware of this quite yet, is how to access that teacher backpack. We have made this pretty simple. And if you are used to Google, there's always more than one way to do something in Google. It's the same with the teacher backpack. So whatever works for you, you can go to the JCPS backpack from your waffle. And once you are signed in to the JCPS backpack, teachers and staff, not students, but teachers and staff will see the teacher backpack button right there next to number 1. So you can go to it that way. If you stay logged into the backpack to check on your kids' rosters or the dashboard, that may be an easy way for you. The second way, if you are signed in on the Chrome browser, you will see a JCPS quick links folder. There are several resources in that folder for you. And I actually put in a ticket for the teacher backpack to be placed in there as well. It's not there yet, but hopefully it will be there very shortly, very soon, maybe this week, right at your fingertips. And the one way that I always use, probably because I'm used to typing jcps.me, is the jcps.me/teacher BP URL. So you can use any of those 3 ways to access the backpack.
So Kathleen, we'd like to ask everybody that's on that has their computers to go to jcps.me/teacherbp and bookmark your backpack.
Yep, go ahead and bookmark it. Make sure it's there for you, at least until the quick links. Once that quick link shows up, it'll be bookmarked there for you as well.
Awesome.
All right, so once you get into the backpack, this is the first screen that you will see. And before Susan dives into it, I want to point out just a few things. Up in the very top of that blue banner, you will see the JCPS digital backpack. So that is a link to get to our JCPS backpack. In the middle, there's a teacher backpack tour. So it's just a quick video to show you around the teacher backpack and all of the different resources and options that are there for you, as well as the ECE NTI resources. So those are bookmarked at the top for teachers also. And then you can see it's divided up by K through 5 in the purple, and then middle school is in the yellow column. The green column is our high school. And then our red column is a bunch of different items. So we have our career and tech ed is there, as well as all of our dance and music and physical education. Our ECE, we have an ECE teacher backpack. We have an ESL teacher backpack. We also have one for our librarians. And the newest one that we added, I believe last year, Susan, is the STEM teacher backpack. So if you are a STEM teacher, you can go to this backpack for many different resources for STEM, as well as theater, visual arts, world language, all of many of Susan's colleagues are the ones that made those backpacks possible and got those links in there for you. And then at the very bottom, I've put a purple box around it to point it out. It's kind of small, is the feedback button. And this is important because when you go to that feedback button, it will take you to a Google form, very simple, 3-question Google form. And we also have a principal backpack. So it wants to know, are you giving feedback for the teacher backpack or the principal backpack? And then let us know, maybe you found a link that is broken. We hope not, but you might find something that's not working correctly, or maybe you have this fantastic idea of something that needs to be added or changed. Please give us feedback. And if you want Susan or myself, or even Dr. Coleman, she's in with this work as well, to follow up with you, please leave your email address, but you do not have to. So know that that form is there for you to give feedback. We want to hear your voices as well. All right, Susan. So there's that image of once you get inside the teacher backpack, that's what it looks like. Do you want me to go live for you now?
Let's go live.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the teacher backpack. I'll show you quickly, jcps.me/teacher. You can see it. Remember, teacher BP. So here we are live with the teacher backpack. And sorry, my closed captioning is going to be off now, but as I scroll down, I'm going to go ahead and click on that first grade teacher backpack. And you can see here that we have just that landing page. It gives you the purpose statement once again. But this, I wish when I was in the classroom 4 years ago, I wish I had this. This is packed full of all those essential things that teachers need when you are preparing your lessons. And Susan, do you want to talk about them?
Yeah. So when we broke the teacher backpack down, we broke it into 6 sections. There's the curriculum and instruction section, the assessment section, content specific, of course, backpack resources, racial equity resources, and then guiding resources across all categories. So we're going to go back to the curriculum and instruction, and you will see in the curriculum and instruction section links that directly link you to the CDLI website for all of our curriculum and instructional materials. And the great thing is this is by grade level. So when you go in, you will find yours specific to your grade level. So you'll first see the instructional frameworks, which is our how that we structure our day for learning experiences for students. So those are broken down by content area. Those are in. Then the next section is our curriculum frameworks. So there you can see this is the first grade ELA curriculum frameworks. Those are broken down by modules, and then within each module, there are units. So one click away and you are into our curriculum frameworks.
And that's what I love about this, Susan, is that if I'm a first grade teacher, all I need to do is bookmark maybe this particular backpack. If this is what I'm mainly working on, I could bookmark this slide, just clicking on that little lock and drag it down right here to my bookmark bar. And I will always have that. My first grade ELA, math, social studies, science frameworks right at my fingertips. I just think that is very, very convenient.
Kathleen, we had a question in the chat. Is
Sure.
MSD under the ECE link, or is there a separate one for that?
Great question. I believe it is under, you know what? Let's just, Susan, is it okay if I go and check?
Absolutely.
Because guess what? If it's not there, we need to add that. Our fantastic ECE department added things, and they were looking for MSD and anything specific about MSD, or just let's see.
They just asked if MSD was under the ECE backpack.
It should be in here. Any of them, I'm not sure exactly what information about you're looking for, but if you don't find it in the ECE backpack, you can fill out that feedback form, and I will get with the people that made this at the district and Dr. Chevalier's office to get it added. Great question.
Thanks,
And
Kathleen.
keep them coming. If you have any more questions, let us know. Okay, so go ahead, Susan.
Okay, so back to the curriculum and instruction. We won't click on the video, but there's a video on how to use the frameworks that the instructional leads provided for you. There's also the revised standards deconstruction and unit planning tool. Later this afternoon, Suzanne Kramer and Ryan New are going to have a session on the new standards deconstruction and unit planning tool. But within that is the blank tool that you would go in and make a copy for yourself to use. Then there are 4 assignment review protocols. These are assignment review protocols from TNTP. These are to be used when teachers are deciding, so how am I going to structure the assignments for this unit? And so those are to ensure that you are providing grade level specific work. We will have provide more training on how to use those specific review protocols in the upcoming weeks with CDLI and TNTP. So we're going to go next. Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm sorry. I noticed something that I wanted to point out. We've tried our best to color code these. And so if you see the ELA instructional framework is originally it's purple. Now this turned green because I've clicked on it, but originally it was purple, and then the math green, science yellow, and social studies red. So you'll see that throughout, especially over in the content specific box. But sorry, Susan, go ahead.
No, I have to give a shout out to Kathleen because she is the brains around the person who designed this backpack and always strives to make it beautiful and help those of us who are, we always have these ideas, but we send them to Kathleen. So Kathleen, thank you. Let's move over to the assessment box. And in the assessment box, you will see the assessment landscape page. That link directly links you to the CDLI Google site for our district supported assessments, formative assessments, universal screeners, summative, and demonstrations of learning. So basically from there, you would just click into, which we don't have to do, Kathleen, one of the boxes, and there will be all the purpose statements and samples of different types of assessments, but you can actually go to our curriculum frameworks for actual sample assessments. There's also MAP, which you all know is our universal screener. So we have MAP goal setting guidance. We also have our MAP implementation guide. The new 2021 MAP implementation guide is already there, ready to go. So you can use that for guidance. We also have different types of assessment ideas and resources. Design in 5, which is a protocol from Solution Tree that's used for designing assessments. We have project-based learning assessments, more and along those lines, resources for assessments when you are engaged in a PBL unit, and then performance-based assessments, reviewing the basics of actually those performance assessments. So lots of assessment resources there for teachers to use. Now we'll move over into the content specific box. So the first box is how to personalize learning. And so that's just a resource for you when you are designing personalized learning for students. And it also, this is a great book and a great resource on personalized learning by Barbara Bray. Absolutely wonderful resource. So it's there, there's an overview, and then once you get to that site, there's also like overviews of each of the chapters. So that is the book that is our anchor text for personalized learning in JCPS. So if you are in our personalized learning cohort, you know that this is the book that we've started with as an anchor text, and this is the one that we will always use when we are talking about and working with schools on personalized learning, to personalize learning for your students. Okay, then we have, and we don't have to click on these, Kathleen, but we have in the purple, we have literacy support. So there's a literacy support website. We have resources for guided reading. So you notice that those are in purple, and those match the purple over with ELA in the curriculum and instruction site. math workshop. There are lots of resources there for math and math workshop. There's science resources, and then there's social studies resources. And so, again, Kathleen has color coded the content specific box to match the colors that are in the curriculum and instruction box.
And Susan, I want to point out too that we are right now in the first grade backpack. For some reason, this is where we always start, and then we update the other backpacks. But this will be different for our middle school backpacks. Of course, they're not going to have the K-5 literacy support link here. It'll be different for middle and high school, and your instructional leads for each level are the ones that put this content specific information in here. Is that right?
Yes. So the content specific will be based on more towards like your grade level. So there's probably a 6-8 and a 9-12.
Yes.
So those will be different based upon the grade levels. The assessment box will stay the same regardless of, that's the same K-12. Same thing with the backpack resources, the racial equity, and then the guiding resources across all categories. Those will all be the same K-12. So let's take a look just at the backpack resources. So the first link is to our JCPS, the New Normal digital booklet.
Yes, and if you're not familiar with that, you probably should check that out for sure.
And then our JCPS Backpack of Success website skills. Success skills website. Oh my goodness.
That's all right. Yeah. So this is the website with, it's packed of resources and videos about the backpack. So if you have parents or community members that are asking questions, this is a great place to go to find those answers. That's what that is. Made by the wonderful Stephanie Mills over in my colleague in IT. What else?
And then, we also have the quality work protocol. You'll be hearing about the quality work protocol more in our next session. But the quality work protocol is really just a protocol for looking at student work to ensure that it's quality, and it's a really easy step-by-step protocol that teachers can use to look at student work.
And that goes in great for the backpack and having those backpack artifacts.
Absolutely. And then just we have performance outcomes. We have a defense debrief. We have like a defense implementation success criteria, and then a self-assessment for defenses for your school. And those are awesome resources to use. Whether you're in school or you're doing defenses virtually, which I know happened in the spring. So, and I think JCPS was one of the few school districts across the nation who were actually doing defenses virtually. So kudos to those of you who have done that. So then if you move over into the next box, Kathleen, those are our racial equity resources. We begin with our equity framework. And then we have our affirming racial equity during NTI 2.0. So if we could just show that.
Yep, and this was just added we got this added a few weeks ago from our DEP department.
Yes. So these are the descriptors in the sections for the R tool, and it really just is like a one-pager that shows you like the sections and then the descriptors, and then when you're looking at curriculum, yes or no, are you matching these descriptors? So this is just really a guide for you to use. And then our DEP resource teachers have, of course, their names and their emails, and then their Twitter handles. And then if you want to do a reflection, that's there. So our friends at DEP have provided a lot of resources for us in that racial equity box.
And they are all amazing. I've learned so much from all of them. So I definitely would recommend reaching out to them even further.
Yes, and I know that during the next 2 weeks, they are going to have professional learning around using the R tool, which would be an amazing professional learning experience for teachers. We also have other resources there. We have our DEP Resource Teacher podcast series. We have the REAP, we have the empty document. So I'm not going to go through all of those, but those are just some wonderful key resources that have been provided from our DEP department. And then we have our last box in this category is guiding resources across all curriculum, all categories. So in this section, we have things like our 6 systems blueprint. We have a 4P planning template. We have information about the MTSS, multi-tier systems of support. We have the handbook template for schools. We also have our MTSS toolkits overview. And then we actually have an example of one of the toolkits for engagement. We have our student acceleration plan essentials, and really what that is for those of you, it's plans for how, we look to see where using data a student, is academically and where we want them to go. And then that student acceleration plan is really the step-by-step guide on how you are going to move that student from where they are to grade level or beyond. So that's an excellent resource. There are gifted resources for students. We have our Kentucky academic standards. We have the PLC framework. There's also our behavior intervention book. We have our SPP&G, which is grading guidance, the WIDA standards for EL learners. We also have a link to our friends at the wonderful JCPS Digital Learning Channel. And then we have a district support teams handbook. And that district support teams identifies all of our district actually support. And so you can go into that little booklet and find the people that you're looking for to help you in your zones or in your schools. So Kathleen, do you want to just show that real quick?
Sure, I can. And also just as a reminder,
update this, yeah.
Do what?
And we probably need to update this.
That's what I was getting ready to text someone. We need to update this. But as a reminder, well, this is a living document. So even if people are updating it now, it would be live. But also, I do know some of the documents are PDFs, and I have a few emails in my inbox to update some of those MTSS documents. So know that if today you check it, tomorrow morning, it may be something new. So it's good to check back.
Okay.
There's the district handbook. I'll close out of that. All right. So that is the basic for the first grade, handbook, the first grade backpack. And if I close out of here, Susan, I think it's a good idea to give them an overview for our high school teachers that are here. I'm not going to click on 9th grade just for a second to show what that looks like. It's a little bit different as far as the content. You'll see different things here, but for the most part, the bottom section will stay the same for the K through 12.
Yeah, the really the only sections that will change are the curriculum and instruction, and those will be again specific to the grade level, and then the content specific. But the other 4 boxes will remain the same for all grade levels K-12.
Yep. So if I click on the career and technical education, this backpack looks just a little bit different. You have your landing page here. So if you are a health and science teacher or any of these areas, information technology, you can click on the area and it will take you to your designated slide for your backpack. So we have the IT backpack here for the teachers that are teaching that. And Susan, do you want to say anything else about this backpack or?
No, just this one is very specific to CTE, and so I think it's great that you can just like find your area and then just click on it and your resources are there. So really, once you get here, it's just one more click and then you are to your specific backpack.
Yep, so you have that one. And I do want to point out the library backpack, our friends over at Library Media. And I think even if you are not a librarian, this is still a great resource for all of our teachers to go to find just the different content specific links and resources for you when if you teach reading. So they have several different content specific links for literacy. Right. Anything else on this page? Let's see. Click on the STEM backpack for a second. I know we have just a few more minutes. I don't want to leave Matt with a bunch of time, although he is really fun to hear from. So again, this is for STEM teachers. We have a lot of code.org lessons that are in here, K through 12, and also the Kentucky Academic Standards for Computer Science. If you are a STEM teacher or teach technology, or even if you don't teach technology in a classroom per se, you probably are going to be teaching it with your students. So here are some fantastic resources for you for incorporating technology, even right now when we are going to be home or working virtually. So there's Apple Learn to Code and Swift coding, as well as engineering in the elementary curriculum. So there are a bunch of different resources there. I'm looking over. The content specific is more content specific things that you can do in the actual STEM lab. And then the bottom, like we said earlier, would be the same as the other backpack. So the STEM backpack may be something that teachers want to check out, even if it's just for looking at those Kentucky Academic Standards for computer science. All right. So this is your teacher backpack. We do have on our presentation that's linked on the schedule. Some of these boxes are linked up to different sites, but are there any questions in the chat for us, Matt, or did we do such a fantastic job? We left them speechless.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in there. You guys answered the ones from earlier. Yeah, it looks great. Rick Reidner said, what about the technology standards? Is it different than CS? If you want to answer
Hi,
that.
Rick. Hi, I want to say hi to you. Shout out to you. Great question. The technology standards will need to be linked in there as well. So that's one of those things that we need to comb through and update. So thank you for that reminder. I am writing that down along with a few other things. And actually, I've received, wow, you are listening. Let's see, Susan, I have 5 emails saying that people have filled out the form to give us feedback. So I'm excited to see what feedback you have. Together we are brilliant. And I know that you've probably thought of some things that we didn't think of. So thanks for that.
That's awesome. So just in closing, we are really, really proud of this work with this backpack, because we know that, like Kathleen said, if I were a teacher, I'd be like, oh my goodness, this is all here. And so just know that in CDLI, in the curriculum department, we really strive to streamline everything through those links so that teachers have what they need at their fingertips. And if there's anything in CDLI, IT3, we're always collaborating on projects that we can do to support, or if there's something, again, like Kathleen said, that you need in the backpack, just let us know and we will do our best to get it in there. So everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you, Kathleen. I always love presenting with you. So
good to see you. I miss your face. I miss everyone's faces. Thank you, Matt, for having us. And we'll be back again, I think, Wednesday. So
yes, thank you for being here. That was awesome. You guys had a ton of love in the chat and everybody was really enjoying it. So thank you both.
sure.
Alrighty, everybody. So we are going to take a look at our schedule. So remember, you can get to that by going to jcps.me/NTI, clicking on the Teacher Resource Toolkit, and then going to the Virtual Professional Learning Schedule. As we look there, we just got done with the JCPS Teacher Backpack, and that link is available there to their presentation if you click on it. Coming up next, we have 5 Basics with Dr. Carmen Coleman, Susan Price, and Suzanne Kramer. And then, this is actually the old schedule, so let me refresh that really quickly. Because after that we have Standards, Deconstruction, and Unit Planning with Ryan New and Suzanne Kramer, and then coming back to redo their session from earlier this morning where we had some internet glitches. We have Suzanne Kramer, Mighty Shepherd, and Joe McKim talking about JCPS curriculum frameworks and instructional frameworks. So that's going to be great. So I know we had some problems with those like the internet connection going out and stuff sometimes, which, happens. It was raining and it's Louisville, so of course our internet's not going to work. While we are waiting to get started, I'm going to pull a couple tabs over to this window so we can look at them. So right now I'm looking at the JCPS Digital Learning channel. So if you guys subscribe to us, you will get notified every time a video is posted. And all of these videos we're talking about will be sorted into a Principal NTI 2.0 playlist, the Family and Community NTI 2.0 playlist, or one that's not on here yet, which is a Teacher NTI 2.0 playlist. So all of these sessions can be found to go back and watch with the power of pause, so you can look at these things at your own leisurely pace so you can take control of your own learning there. Additionally, if you want to follow along with our learning and tune into the things going around the district, we would love to see what you're sharing and what you're doing. So follow us on Twitter at JCPSDigIn, that stands for Digital Innovation. And when you tweet, use the hashtag JCPSDigIn, so we can give you a like, we can give you a retweet, and we can give you some love for the awesome stuff you're doing around our district. So, it is 1:30. We are moving on to our next session. We have 5 Basics with Carmen Coleman, Susan Price, and Suzanne Kramer. So, and before we get started, as you guys take a look at this lineup today, this is like some 1992 like Dream Team Barcelona basketball style stuff here. This is an awesome lineup that we have today, and we are super lucky to have so many awesome presenters with us. So, as I say that, I'm going to turn it over to you all to lead us into our next session.
Thank you.
Suzanne. So before Suzanne puts the PowerPoint up, I will tell you that Dr. Coleman is in a meeting. She may be joining us on Wednesday. And we also have with us the amazing elementary math lead, Andrea Higdon. So I've got to get her name on the schedule. So Andrea, we are glad that you are here. We certainly miss Dr. Coleman, but we're going to give it our best go so that she'll just be so proud of us at the end of this presentation. So we are ready for the slide deck.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and I'm turning my video off just in case there's any bandwidth issues. So I'm sharing my screen, and we should be.
Yep, we can see it.
Right.
Then,
and I'll turn on the closed captioning.
Yes. Y'all are professionals now.
Yes,
Right, listen, we are working hard to get this right.
You just have to click on where it's the actual CC to turn them on.
Oh, thank you.
Yep,
Okay,
there you go.
good.
Thanks.
Is the PowerPoint up?
It is.
It
Yes.
is.
Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Susan Price again. So we have designed a 5 basics that we want every teacher to be able to have access to use when they are planning curriculum for their students. So we had begun calling this the foundational 5, then we were like trying to come up with something 5. So we have just really called it the 5 basics. So the purpose of the 5 basics is just to really identify our curriculum frameworks, with the instructional frameworks. We also have protocols. We have the standards deconstruction and unit planning protocol. Of course, we have the assessment landscape. We have an assignment review protocol and a quality work protocol. So we are actually calling these our District 5 go-tos for all teachers across the district. Suzanne, so if you're a teacher or if you're a principal, we want to know, like, how do your teachers answer these questions? So how do you decide what and how to teach? How do you deconstruct standards as well as combine those standards to create units of study? Where can you find information about different types of assessments, their purposes, and assessments aligned to standards that are ready to use? How do you know that the tasks you create for students are on grade level and aligned with standards? How do you know that the products you ask students to create are the quality they need to be? And I bet you all can answer this one if you were in that last session. Where can you find all of these resources? So these are questions that we want every teacher in JCPS to be able to answer. So stay tuned throughout this presentation and you will learn how to answer those questions with using the 5 essentials as your resources. Andrea?
We begin first with every curriculum framework with the Kentucky Academic Standards and Practices.
So here on this screen, we have the first element of our Essential 5, which is the JCPS curriculum frameworks. And we talked a lot about these this morning, that these formulate the what of what we're teaching. All of our curriculum frameworks are connected with similar design principles and guidance that are aligned to the Kentucky academic standards. And then they are moving us toward our vision for racial equity, and connected to our backpack of success skills and deeper learning. And so this purpose statement and the design principles within are within all of our curriculum frameworks, regardless of discipline. And so here you'll see some of the design elements and principles. And so we want to ensure equitable and culturally responsible experiences for all. So we worked really hard to make shifts in our frameworks in ELA and in social studies and across the board to move toward a more anti-racist pedagogy. And so our frameworks are also cohesive, and we bundle standards together in units of study that are driven by the success skills. We have a flexible framework. So in the curriculum frameworks, we link to highly rated resources that require little teacher manipulation. And we also have design from scratch pathways across the board so that collaborative teams and teachers can design the best possible units of study for their context, their students, their schools. Again, it has high quality vetted resources. We know that materials matter and that all students need access to the highest quality materials. And then in moving more toward our vision for deeper learning, all of our curriculum frameworks facilitate and have suggestions for PBLs, for deeper learning, transfer tasks, and for personalized pathways. And of course, you can find the curriculum frameworks for all of our disciplines at all levels in the teacher backpack.
So we've talked about the what. The instructional framework is the how. It provides a disciplinary structure for the how-to of teaching and learning. Each of the frameworks in all disciplines is based upon research and includes the best practices for engaging all students. The instructional frameworks outline possible teacher and student moves to ensure an equitable and engaging learning experience for all kids. So displayed on the screen, you'll see two examples of the instructional frameworks. You see the elementary math and you see the secondary ELA. Note the re-envisioning of the elementary math framework to include the 3 math workshop. There's an inquiry, task, and share, which includes differentiation and choice by process and product. There's also the mini focus lesson in a small group while having intentional learning centers around the focus standard and fluency standards. Or the focus lesson may be in more of a guided math structure in small groups. Each of these provides voice and choice and differentiation, with the teacher serving as facilitator and students developing the success skills as they become more independent learners. Additional clarification with the number sense routines is provided and linked above to provide clarity and support across all classrooms. In the upcoming weeks, our team will be providing high-quality professional learning across all content areas on executing the elements of workshop with the instructional framework in a virtual environment. And of course, these can all be found in the teacher backpack.
So as part of our essential resources, the 5 essential resources for instructional design and planning, we have reimagined our standards deconstruction and unit planning document. And so this tool is a really important part of mid-range planning that collaborative teams should engage in. Its purpose is to ensure a locally developed, guaranteed, and viable curriculum that's coherent with our vision and with the curriculum and instructional frameworks. And so we're just going to show you from a really high level perspective some of the shifts that you'll see in this standards deconstruction document. So whereas before teachers would engage in planning or identifying essential standards and deconstructing them only at the beginning of the year and all in one fell swoop, here what we've reimagined is that teachers would choose those intentionally bundled standards that are noted in the curriculum frameworks and engage in this deconstruction process at the unit level. So more just-in-time planning so that we're more intimately connecting performance with standard. And so you'll see down the left-hand side that many of these questions are ones that were in the previous standards deconstruction document. So here we would be looking for performance assessments that are bringing those standards all together. So you're in your collaborative team, choose some summative performance tasks, formative performance tasks from the curriculum frameworks, make them your own, and then sort of begin with the end in mind, that backward design mindset, to plan from performance task down through deconstruction. And so here, collaborative teams, this is the same thing as the previous version of this document, but just prioritizing the types of design that we have in our instructional vision. And so here, collaborative teams would decide what are the success criteria for mastery performance. So how will these standards come together, and how will we share what success criteria will be? And that would go in this section right here. And then finally, we would deconstruct the standards down into those concepts and understandings that connect together, and that we need to scaffold and engage in intentionally designed lesson planning across the unit down in this yellow portion. And Susan's going to go ahead and share some more information about our assessment landscape, which is the third item in our 5 basic essential resources for planning and design.
So when you are in the teacher backpack, if you click on in the assessment tab, if you click on the assessment landscape, it will take you directly to the CDLI assessment landscape page. And so really the assessment landscape page serves as a purpose for different types of assessment, how they should be used in the triangulation of data to make instructional decisions. So leaders and teachers can use the assessment landscape page when they are actually designing assessments, or looking at their standards deconstruction, that first section with the standards. So there are lots of different ideas and information in the assessment landscape page to be used as a resource. And Suzanne's going to tell you about some assessments that are in our curriculum frameworks. And those assessments can be found in the curriculum frameworks in the teacher backpack. Suzanne?
Thank you. So at this level of the assessment landscape, as Susan said, we can see the different types of assessment and how instructional leaders, schools, and PLCs can triangulate data from these sources to make instructional decisions. So where are those assessments coming from? Well, for formative and summative performance tasks in all of our curriculum frameworks across disciplines, we have given just some examples of types of formative and summative tasks that are aligned in content and standard to the particular module in the framework where they're listed. And so here is just an example. On all of our curriculum frameworks, we lead with some type of compelling question. So for this one, this is module 0 for middle school ELA. What is a learning community? And so here what you'll see is I've offered a couple of a performance task, a formative performance task, and a summative performance task that brings together a couple of standards at the beginning of the year with pretty low cognitive load that then end up in a community building, identity building transfer task. And this sort of model of formative, summative transfer with options for collaborative teams to modify and build upon then becomes more complex as the curriculum frameworks continue on into the year. And so again, these formative, summative, and transfer tasks can be found in all of our curriculum frameworks across disciplines.
So our next tool is the TNTP Assignment Review Protocol. Some of you may have heard of TNTP. They are the group who wrote the Opportunity Myth. And the Opportunity Myth was about how students were not really prepared after graduation to go out into the world. And so they found that there were four key things that those students needed. And one was being grade level assignments. So that's why TNTP, after their research, developed these 4 assignment review protocols. One is for ELA, one for math, one for science, and one for social studies. And so the purpose of all of these protocols is to assist teachers in understanding if an assignment is giving students the opportunity to meaningfully engage in worthwhile grade level content. So we're not going to click into one now, but when you do click into it, it does seem just a bit extensive. So we know the reality is you are not going to use this for every assignment that you are assigning to your students, but it is a really great tool when you are unit planning and just giving an overview of, oh, these are the assignments, or these are the things that our students are going to be asked to do in this unit. So let's ensure that those are worthwhile and that they are also linked to grade level content, because we know that all students need access and should have access to grade level content in Tier 1 instruction. So the 5th tool is our quality work protocol. The quality work protocol really isn't anything new to JCPS. We've been using it for a couple years when we are looking at student work. And the purpose of the quality work protocol is to just provide a common vision as we use student work to improve teaching and learning. But one of the things that I really want to stress with this as well is when we're going through the quality work protocol, we are using that work as adults. And so when we get feedback on that work in a PLC, I would encourage you guys to take the student work back to the students and talk about them through reflection and expectations. How can we move this work to the next level? Because not only is that going to improve teaching and learning in the classroom, but it's also going to promote student agency and student ownership of their work. How can we really ask them to improve upon their work if we aren't showing it to them, if we aren't engaged in those reflective conversations? So the quality work protocol really promotes looking at that work. We have a common vision of how we want the work to look, but let's allow that to improve teaching and learning in our classrooms and student ownership. And that can be found in the teacher backpack.
And so I think as we look at tools 4 and 5, I think it's really important to remember that looking at student work through a qualitative and quantitative lens is a really important part of our PLC framework, and that in those steps 2 and 3, we really need to be engaging in that process. And we also know that task predicts performance. And so I think that's where the assignment review protocols can be really important in ensuring that the what we're asking students to do is going to get us to the type of work that are going to be the demonstrations of learning that meet those dispositions in the backpack of success skills. And so this last slide just really pulls together how these essential resources and protocols support implementation of the instructional core. The instructional core is what you see in the center of this graphic, with students at the center, of course. And then the instructional core is made up of standards and curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And so these 5 essential tools that are in the teacher backpack really make up the quality, really ensure quality in the instructional core. And then you can also see how equity, deeper learning, culture, and climate surround that, and how all are connected to our 6 systems.
Okay, Suzanne, can you go back to the instructional core?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're going to play a little game. We have a little extra time, so I'm going to ask the questions that have the answers on the next slide. So when I ask the question, I want you to type in the answers in the chat. And then you can do a little self-assessment at the end to see how well you did. So the first question is, how do you decide what to teach and how? 1 minute. Okay, ready for question 2? How do you deconstruct standards as well as combine standards to create units of study? Which one of the essential 5 go-tos will you go to for that? Number 3, where do you find information about different types of assessments, their purposes and examples, and assessments aligned to standards ready to use? Number 4, how do you know the tasks you create for students are on grade level and aligned to standards? And number 5, how do you know that the products you ask students to create are the quality they need to be? One of the essential 5s will you use? And last, where can you find all of these resources? Okay, Suzanne, for the big reveal. So, of course, you can use the curriculum and instructional frameworks that they will tell you how to decide what to teach and how to teach it. You can use the standards deconstruction and unit planning tool for deconstructing your standards and combining those standards to create your units of study. You will find different types of assessments and their purposes in the JCPS assessment landscape. And you can actually find assessments that are aligned to standards ready to use in the curriculum frameworks. We use the assignment review protocols to know that the tasks we are creating for students are on grade level and aligned to standards. And once you have that, you can use the quality work protocol to really look at the quality of the work that the students have produced. And you can find all of those resources in the teacher backpack.
And
Do we have any questions in the chat?
No, I haven't seen any. Looks like everybody was answering your questions correctly. Yeah. No, it's been great. Thank you.
Okay, I know that we are just a little bit early, so I just wanted to be able to offer support from CDLI. Our instructional leads and instructional coaches, deeper learning teams are always willing to come out and be in PLCs with your teams, helping to facilitate these protocols and practices. So anything you need, you can't find us in the teacher backpack, but we are just one email away. So thank you, and tell your friends if they want to hear about the JCPS 5 Essentials. We will be back on Wednesday.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. We appreciate you being here with us and for however many hours you are, and we'll see you on Wednesday again.
thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Bye.
Thanks for an amazing team.
Alrighty, so we have about 6 minutes until our next session, so let's go through some other things. So again, remember, all of these sessions will be broken up and available on the JCPS Digital Learning channel where you currently are. If you subscribe, you'll be notified whenever we go live or whenever we post a new video. And all the videos we've gone through the past few days will be found in the Principal NTI 2.0 playlist right here, the Family and Community NTI 2.0 playlist, or one which is not shown right here, the Teacher NTI 2.0 playlist. So you can come back and look at those, and you can have the power of pause as you watch through that. So if you want to find our schedule and our links to all these, what am I calling them here? All of these sessions, go to jcps.me/NTI. That will take you right here. You can click on the NTI Teacher Toolkit on that picture, and then go to the Virtual Professional Learning Schedule. That will bring you to this spreadsheet right here. You can see that all of our sessions are listed out there. So we just got done with the 5 basics, which will be back on Wednesday at the same time and the same place. Let me refresh just to make sure we don't have any other changes. Coming up next at 2 o'clock, we have Standards Deconstruction and Unit Planning with Ryan New and Suzanne Kramer. And then after that, we had our session this morning about curriculum frameworks and instructional frameworks, but we had some issues with some internet, so hopefully those will not be present this time, as Suzanne Kramer, Maddie Shepard, and Joe McKim take us through that to round out our day, and that should be 2:30 until 3:30, I believe, that we do that. Tomorrow, we will be back starting at 11 a.m. This will be our digital innovation team going through our NTI 2.0 recommended core digital tools. So you can see at the top here, each day is organized into different topics, and then if we look at the week of August 17th, again, you can see the different topics there as well. So we will be talking about Google Classroom for instructional design tomorrow. That'll be Russ Hockenberry and Jack Bosley. Google Meet for synchronous learning with Kyle Chandler and Jim Unger. Then we'll have a 12 to 12:30 lunch break. We'll be back with Screencastify, which we now just learned we have a district unlimited license for teachers, which is huge. So you have unlimited recording time, unlimited recorded videos, and you'll have access to that video editor that Screencastify has embedded as well. So that's going to be huge for all of us. After that, we have Jamboard with myself and Elaine Abernatha. I call her Elaine Jabernatha because she's so good with Jamboard. That'll be at 1 o'clock. And then we have Kathleen Receiver and Rebecca Reynolds talking to us about Read and Write. That'll be from 1:30 to 2:30. And then Heather will be here talking about the NTI 2.0 portal. We'll end with using Jamboard for instruction with Sarah Brock and Katie Wolf. And then we'll talk about breakout rooms and Google Meet with Rebecca Reynolds. So, if you want to follow along with what our digital innovation team is doing or people are doing across the district, please follow us on Twitter at JCPSDigIn. And please, whenever you tweet, use the hashtag JCPSDigIn, and we'll take a look at the latest here. So we'll give you a like, we'll give you a retweet. We love seeing the awesome things that you and your schools are doing throughout our district. Additionally, this is something that we did last year. I'm going to pull this tab over really quickly. We will get this tweeted out and get some yes cards going as well. So in the spring, we had you guys fill out these virtual yes cards and download the image of them and send them through tweets to people across the district in your building, or maybe somebody that you work with across schools. So as my example today, I'm sending one to Elaine, thanking her for stepping in this morning when we had some technical issues. She is thebomb.com, and again, I told you I call her Elaine Jambonatha because she's so good with Jamboard. Do we have any questions about anything in the chats? I see a lot of yay on Screencastify. All these sessions will be available on demand. So right after this is done, you will be able to find the recording of this whole 3-hour block from 12:30 to 3:30. But then, since I'm the one leading these sessions this afternoon, or the one moderating these sessions, I'll be going through tomorrow morning, and I'll be breaking these up into 30-minute snippets and posting those in those playlists that we talked about. Again, it'll look just like this, except it'll say, I'm going to reload so maybe you can see it. Nope, it's not there yet. It's the Teacher and Community NTI 2.0 playlist, and that's where all of these videos will be found for you to go back and look at. And that's the same for everything we talk about this week. So all of these tomorrow will be found in the NTI Teacher 2.0 playlist. And then by Friday, we on the Digital Innovation team will also have a video for parents and families as well to look at. So Elaine and I, for example, we're going to be talking about Jamboard for interactive whiteboard. We will again be recording something this week to put in the family playlist let's go back to that. Put in this family and community playlist right here that talks about how students are going to be using Jamboard. That way, parents and family members can be informed on how that's going to look for their student. So it is 1:59. I am sure you all are very close to sick of hearing me talk, so I'm going to introduce our next presenter, which is going to be Ryan New, as he talks about standards deconstruction and unit planning. Ryan, are you there? Oh, you're muted, Ryan.
I am here, muted, and so Suzanne Kramer will be joining us very shortly, largely because she'll be sharing her screen. She goes through this because my internet is so wonky that I might just drop out in the middle of it. So if I do that, I apologize. But I'll also be manning the chat as Suzanne sort of walks us through, and then I'll be able to sort of we'll tag team through there. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and screen share and we'll get going.
All right. Oh, oops, sorry. And if you guys are following along with us in the chat, please make sure to let us know where you're from, and if you have any questions about anything as we get going, I'll be paying attention to that, and I'll interject and ask Suzanne and Ryan if they have any other questions, or if you have any questions that they can answer them. All right, it looks like we're about ready to go.
All right, so today we're here to talk about one of those essential 5 resources that Susan and Andrea and I just shared, and that is our Reimagined Standards Deconstruction and Unit Planning document, which can be found in the PLC framework and in the teacher backpack. And so again, this slide shows the instructional core. And of course, standards deconstruction and planning is a part of that top bubble above that student that's at the center of our instructional core. And so we just wanted to contextualize this discussion as an essential part of mid-range planning in the instructional core. And so again, we just got done talking about the 5 basics for teaching and learning, and that all of these things can be found in the teacher backpack. And so after this presentation, Maddie and Joe and I will be sharing about the curriculum and instructional frameworks. And right now, the objective for Ryan and I is to talk you through some of the shifts that we made very intentionally around the standards deconstruction and unit planning, and what upcoming support we're going to provide on that document, and how to leverage it for high quality curriculum design. And so again, at the end of the last presentation, we asked you these questions, and it's really important that all of our teachers can clearly answer these questions. Some of the feedback that we got the last round of NTI, and something for us to remember, is that parents and families don't experience our school district in a school by school or level by level basis. Many of our families have students that attend schools in all different parts of the city at all different levels. And so for NTI 2.0, we need more consistency, clearer communications, and coherence. And so one way to get at that is to really be aligned in how we're answering these questions about how we decide what to teach, and how we deconstruct standards to see the conceptual connections in and among them, where we find our information about assessment design, how do we analyze tasks, and how do we ensure that student work meets the quality that we need for our backpack and to meet grade level standards. Ryan, is this you or me?
Still you.
Still me. Okay. So of course, our curriculum frameworks begin with the Kentucky Academic Standards, which are all linked here. And we know that all teachers, instructional coaches, and instructional leaders are familiar with. And so We begin our curriculum frameworks with those standards, which are bundled together into units of study for collaborative teams and teachers to design around. And so here we have the overall purpose of our standards deconstruction document, that it's an essential aspect of long and mid-range planning. And we're going to discuss in a minute some of the shifts that have been made in the document very intentionally to drive our vision for instructional design and for deeper learning.
So one of the questions that we are looking at is why reimagine standards deconstruction? So oftentimes, you know, that looking at the before column is that usually the year began, and again, we're not here to point any fingers, right? That the goal here is to try to figure out what is the most efficient way of being able to look at the standards and be beholden to them throughout the entire year, and not just bucket that at the beginning of the year. And so oftentimes before, teams would deconstruct standards once a year. It was usually at the very beginning of the year, and oftentimes not maybe revisited as much as it should be. Because, as we know, things are going to change over time as we get to better know our students and the issues that may arise in the class. The second bullet here, assessments were developed at the beginning of the year, not an on-time analysis. So it's good to have some idea where you're going at the beginning and to have standards to inform that. But by doing and bucketing all of that at the very beginning of the year, it was difficult to sort of respond to that throughout. So it made it a less genuine document. The third one here is looking at it did not provide a clear transfer for curriculum instruction, right? So the through line of thinking is that standards are the foundation for curriculum. Curriculum then becomes the impetus for instructional choices. So being able to have a document that better provides a through line that allows a clear understanding from standards to curriculum instruction is something that might be needed. And ultimately, there was a lack of attention to strategic bundling of standards, which led to an isolation of content and skills, and oftentimes then just a focus on those skills without how they actually intertwine. This, I know, was particularly problematic in elementary. Now what we're trying to do is figure out how the teams, you know, your PLCs or whatever, can start to deconstruct standards at a unit level. That way there's an on-time, real-time basis for understanding what the standards are and how they're actually evolving in your mind across the year. And that the assessments then would be ongoing, right, to reflect ongoing thinking about the standards, and that ultimately the document provides a backwards design in order to move students from those standards to that assessment. And finally, the bundling of standards, beginning with the performance, leads to more coherent instruction, so that we have both things in mind simultaneously. What is going to be my task, and how does that relate to the standards? So this is the reason why we're thinking about reimagining that standards deconstruction. So one of the things that you might say is, but Ryan, Suzanne, isn't there going to be the same old issues that we've seen before with siloing some of the content? That if social studies has something for, you know, third grade, and ELA has something for third grade, and math has something for third grade, isn't that going to be problematic? Suzanne and I will be presenting on 8/17 at 1 o'clock, same BAT channel, different BAT time, on being able to revisit those interdisciplinary choice boards that will be grounded in a larger compelling question, that will use this deconstruction tool as a way of thinking through the bundling of standards at different levels. And we're going to be specifically looking at an elementary example during that session. So how does this process look in each discipline? So you'll have access to this to be able to see what's going on, but again, it's quite siloed, right? That's typically what happens at the deconstruction level because there's not those curricular understandings of how bundling those standards across disciplines will actually manifest in the classroom. We're going to take you through what the document looks like through a social studies example, since I'm here to do that, and then Suzanne's going to walk us through one of hers as well. So we're going to get to know the document first of all. We're just going to sort of do a big picture overview before you start to take in all of the elements. Remember, this is for standards deconstruction at the unit level. that's happening here. So this is an 8th grade course, U.S. history from 1600 to 1877, and that this is around the question, how does power create conflict? What a great question. So if you'll notice here at the very top, I'm just going to, Susanna, if you don't mind, we're just going to look at the left-hand column there as we go down, and then we'll go back in parts, piece it all together. So the first one is looking at what standards are be to learn, right? And so that's these. And you'll notice with at least my setup here is I've included both 2 columns for inquiry standards because they do different things. And I have 2 columns for disciplinary standards, right? Otherwise, it would just be this enormous sort of long document. And it provides a little bit more flexibility for those standards that I've bundled together. So this is, again, looking at one version of what might happen in the unit. On the left-hand side here, as Suzanne scrolls down, you'll notice that we're looking at assessing student learning. So we're looking at what assessments will be used to measure student mastery, what potential performance task will be included in the unit or lesson, formative and or summative. How will you offer multiple ways of assessing learning, right? And what opportunities there are there for deeper learning, backpack skills, and so on, right? And then on down, we're then moving into success criteria for mastery of standard. So what are the critical characteristics or components of the standard that contribute to mastery performance? What criteria would demonstrate quality responses for assessing learning to ensure grade level mastery? The next section then is all about breaking down a standard, right? What is the content within the standard? What concepts are within the standard? What skills are there? And what prior knowledge, understanding, vocabulary is needed to help master that. So these are sort of the major elements. So again, looking at it from the other side here, you'll notice that breaking down the standard is the very last of this, that we're trying to figure out where we want students to go within the context of how those standards might be broken down. If we break down the standards first, it provides less assurances of moving forward, right? So it's sort of a backwards design process. So if you don't mind to go back to the very top, we'll take a look very quickly at some of the elements that I added in, right, as one example. So you'll see the standards here, right? You'll notice that for those who are new to social studies, we do have new standards. I feel like I've got to keep saying that. But we see then inquiry standards around questioning and using evidence. And then the other one is devoted much more to communicating conclusions. So I parsed out those 2 elements because I know that there's going to be major curricular and instructional ramifications for how I approach each of those sections. If you'll scroll on down, and then on the other side here, we have the disciplinary standards, which basically are just a small model of a larger element, right? So there's a few more standards we might include in that unit, but these are just for an example. When it comes to assessing student learning, what types of, what assessments will be used, right? So we're looking at these larger designs. You'll notice sort of the breakdown here that we're looking at formative could be exit slips devoted to supporting questions or organizational tasks. And then ultimately, at least in my example here, I'm going to have the students do a summative argument that's going to be written. So in order to help understand that, there's going to be this idea of claims, explanations for the formative performance task, using evidence and reasoning support and refute. And that is summative here, right, is going to be defined as an argument, as a series of claims backed by evidence to answer a question. When it looks at the type of what you're going to be doing, right, you can sort of see here, I'll let you guys read so I don't have to read to you, the different ways in which you might approach doing that. You'll notice here that I've combined not just an essay, but also taking informed action, because that also aligns with the type of communicated conclusions that we want students to make in the social studies. And then ultimately, when it comes to different opportunities for deeper learning, really the whole process is grounded in that, because we already have that inquiry process built in. The idea of investigating a question through multiple different ways of expressing that question. Here we've got an essay or a presentation that's an argument. We also have taking informed action, and then ultimately deliberation along the way will help ensure that. You'll notice the same thing on the other side is that there's way more going on under the inquiry standards, because that's the focus, than there is when it comes to the disciplinary standards. When it comes to the disciplinary standards, you're really looking at, okay, so what are we trying to do with these disciplines? That they are really serving, at least in our idea, as the context for the other. This is just an example here. And that the performance tasks would actually include the disciplinary lenses and the language of those standards as students are analyzing, explaining, describing, and interpreting, and so on. The next section I actually combine everything, right? So this is where success for student mastery, this is like a funnel, right? So you're beginning with this larger funnel and you're moving down into what the success criteria for mastery might look like. And you'll notice here that I'm pulling together as much of the argumentation and action pieces as I possibly can, right? So this is where all of the standards, again, as we're breaking them down in those pieces, are going to be set up. So you'll notice here under argumentation that we're about creating claims and counterclaims, relevant information, but we're also including, it says, what are the critical characteristics or components of the standard that contribute to mastery performance? So this is a part where we're adding in part of our rubric for social studies, that ultimately when students create arguments, that we're looking for the accuracy, the clarity, the evidence, and the reasoning of that claim. And that essentially I break down what those might look like as an example using the language of the standards. When it comes to action, same sort of thing. We're looking at breaking down those standards and what that criteria might look like for mastery at that grade level, right? Being able to actually understand the issues, right? Assessing certain things and taking action provide for a better demonstration of that mastery at that level. And then finally, we have then the breaking down of the standards. So we're looking at the skills and concepts. And the content and prior knowledge, and I still remained that integrity. So that middle column there where it says skills goes straight up to where the inquiry skills and procedures are. And on the right side, the concepts, content, and prior knowledge are really based upon the context using the disciplinary standards. So you'll notice here on this one that when it comes to the skills, we're looking at about asking questions, about claim making, about relevant information from multiple sources, the inquiry-based process, everything to a cost-benefit analysis, discussion, declaration. All of these are what the standards are asking our students to be able to do. When it comes to the concepts, we look at, these are just these concepts are what actually come from the language of the standards themselves, right? So we're actually really rooting into the language of the standard, that we haven't broken those down because this becomes the disciplinary vocabulary that we're wanting students to be able to engage in. Not just because they're current students, but because they're future ones as well. And I'll say that it would be great if, for example, people understood the ideas of federalism, right? Which is a major concept that's apparent, that is absolutely not apparent to most people, right? And the idea that we actually have multiple layers of government and that sometimes people can conflate and confuse the two. And then ultimately looking at the content. These are not things that are in the standards. These might appear in the ways in which you might approach the standards. So for us, when looking at this unit, these are very specific things where you might draw sources from, where you might be able to use as a context to show how the standard might be operationalized in the classroom. So thank you very much, Suzanne, for highlighting those. So that if we're talking about a cost-benefit analysis, we might look at the Alien and Sedition Acts, right, as a deeper dive of what is the cost of having that and what is the benefit of having that. So you might be taking something that's traditionally a political or historical view of something and applying a different concept to that content, right, if that makes sense. So we're constantly spiraling in all of these measures of skills, concepts, content, and so on. And then ultimately the prior knowledge here, because we're assuming that this is on unit design, the prior knowledge is essentially the previous teachers engaging in something like this, or teachers on the call that might be engaging in this. You can sort of see that we're bringing it from these larger sort of, these, especially at least in the social studies, these very nebulous standards, and are pulling them into a very clear funnel to make sense of them so that we know exactly what we want students to be able to know and do.
And so I'm going to take just a moment to show a couple of pieces from middle school ELA so that you can see how the document functions in different disciplines. And I also wanted to take a moment to really speak to a piece that our math colleagues, it's really, really important. So sometimes in math, a unit of study will be around a single standard. And so what we have here linked in this presentation is an example of a math deconstruction in a unit that's a single standard for 7th grade. And then here we have a multi-standard example. And then another piece that's really important for math is that the assessment, when we think about performance, we know that in math, we need to be addressing the conceptual understanding and the procedural and the application, but that the performance from that backward design perspective in math can be the thinking, the conceptual understanding. And that down in that deconstruction part, the yellow box, that's where we're looking at where those concepts come together in a way to get that broader conceptual understanding up in the top portion of the document. And so I just really wanted to call that out for math, that we don't want to conflate assessment and performance with just problems, with naked problems, or with modeling or things of that nature. That often in math, the performance is the conceptual understanding. And so here is the middle school ELA document that I created, and you can immediately see some of the differences in social studies, but there are cross-cutting similarities. And so here you see that I have the reading standards bundled with the composition standards. So we have that expressive and receptive language. All along the side here, you'll see my comments that are sort of my metacognitive notes to you around what I was thinking as I was using the JCPS curriculum frameworks for middle school ELA to design this example. And so here, while Ryan has separated the inquiry practices from the disciplinary standards and assessment, I've merged these cells together because in ELA, what we want to see are holistic reading and writing performances at this analytical level, which is the purple level of the standard in the multidimensionality. And so here you'll see these performance tasks pulled directly from the curriculum frameworks that clearly scaffold from 1 all the way up to that summative performance task that brings together all of these standards I've noted at the top. And then I also have included, like Ryan has, taking informed action. We have a transfer task here where we're taking this academic learning and transferring it to a new context. And so we're taking those standards and we're showing our understanding and application of those through a transfer of learning. And then here, our success criteria, we're really recommending single point rubrics for ELA. That's a really great way for collaborative teams in ELA to get at, with this performance task up here, what would be the indicators of a quality performance that bundles these two standards together? And we want to move away from that multiple choice test. We want performances, and performances in ELA come from showing critical thinking, close reading skills, things of that nature through composition. And that composition can be writing or speaking, or some type of digital design as well. And then down here, you move into that deconstruction where we're actually taking these color codes, which are the multidimensionality, and we are breaking down the standard into skills and what prior knowledge students will have. And what we want to see here is look at this cross-cutting skill of analysis and how these reading standards come together sometimes to inform another standard or to inform the composition standard, right? Where we can leverage standard 2 as a scaffold, right? And so I just wanted to show a little bit this ELA document and how this reimagined standards deconstruction both speaks to the discipline and I think is going to give us an entry point into some more interdisciplinary discussions. And so again, we are back to this graphic where we are back to student-centered instructional core. And so the standards deconstruction and finding those conceptual coherence among standards at the unit level is in that standards and curriculum bubble there above the student. And again, we are beginning with the performance in mind and then sort of back mapping the journey. And so, Ryan, I know you've been monitoring the chat. Are there any questions that we need to address or raise up for the good of our viewers?
No, in fact, our good colleagues, Lacey and Jenny and Stacy, have been helping, as has Elizabeth, looking at any kind of questions that come up or offering their support within specific content. So no, there's nothing in the chat as far as questions go, but now's the time to ask them.
Okay, and also of note is that this reimagined standards deconstruction document has been updated in the PLC framework and can be found in the teacher backpack.
Sorry, man, I wasn't ready for parting words of enormous significance. So what I'll say is be patient with yourself and others. How about that?
Yes. And I think we're really looking forward to in CVLI and in connection with our deeper learning colleagues of exploring this interdisciplinary piece as it relates to some of the boards that we designed around compelling questions and how we could use that as sort of back mapping from those interdisciplinary choice boards through the standards deconstruction document to really provide some support around coherent interdisciplinary planning, especially for our elementary school teachers. And so we're really looking forward to digging into that this week, and hopefully we'll present you with some good entry points for you and your collaborative teams when Ryan and I are back to see you in that presentation later this week.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. We appreciate it, and thanks for joining us again. And Suzanne, you're just here all day. Ryan, thank you. We will see you again on Wednesday, I believe. Yes.
I think it's Thursday again. We got this again Thursday, unless now you're making me nervous. So I'll double check, and we'll see you when we see you. How about that?
That sounds great. Thank you. All right, everybody. It is 2:26. We have another session that we're going to end our day with coming up here in just a second. So just a refresher for everybody there, if you go to jcps.me/NTI, if I could learn how to type here, there we go. And then you click on the teacher toolkit, you click on the virtual professional learning schedule, and that will take you to our sessions for the day. Let me refresh this because I think 5 Basics has been linked in there. And we will work to get the standards deconstruction and unit planning stuff that Ryan and Suzanne just went over linked as well. Coming up here in 3 minutes, we will have Suzanne, Maddie, and Joe talking again about the JCPS curriculum frameworks and instructional frameworks. That session was at 11 o'clock this morning, but we had some technical difficulties, and I think some things got skipped over while the video was buffering. So we're going to have that coming to you to round out our day today. Remember, all of these sessions can be found on the JCPS Digital Learning channel where you currently are. So please subscribe. That way you know whenever we go live or post a new video. And all of the stuff that we talk about this week can be found in the Principal NTI 2.0 playlist, the Family and Community NTI 2.0 playlist, or, not pictured here, the Teacher NTI 2.0 playlist. So tomorrow we will have a day talking about our NTI 2.0 recommended core digital tools. All of that can be found on our teacher toolkit as well, so you can see the curricular and instructional tools that we talked about today. I believe that the ladies coming up are going to talk about Mastery Connect a little bit, and I'm sure some of you guys have talked about like Think Circa and Gale and stuff like that through your other trainings, or you will. Tomorrow, this will be what we're talking about with Google Classroom, Google Meet, Screencastify, which we have unlimited for free for all our teachers around the district now, which is awesome, so woot woot for that. I will be talking tomorrow with Elaine Jambanatha about Jamboard, and then we have some other leaders talking about Read and Write tomorrow as well. I believe that's Kathleen and Rebecca. So remember, you can follow along with us on Twitter if you want to follow us. We are at JCPS Dig In. That is for digital innovation. And you can tweet at us using the hashtag JCPSDigIn. That way we can give you a like, we can give you a retweet, and we can help you share the wonderful things that you and everyone else in your school are doing across the district. My phone is blowing up right now, so I'm not really sure why. So we are almost into our last session for the day. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you for asking your questions and helping us all to grow and learn as we go through this together. And I typed this in the chat before, but together we are brilliant, and we appreciate all 300 to 450 of you that have been with us all afternoon today. It has been wonderful. So it is 2:29. I'm going to pass it over to Suzanne and Maddie, and they are going to take it away as we round out our afternoon. So welcome back, ladies. We appreciate you being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maddie Shepard from the Deeper Learning team as a part of the Curriculum Design and Learning Innovation team. With me today is my partner in crime, Suzanne Kramer. I'm actually more of her partner. She's been ruling the Digital Innovation Learning channel today. And I guess I'm her special guest. And then our third musketeer, Joe McKim, might be joining us later in the call to help us go through this learning session together.
Thanks so much, Maddie. And very nice to be here, but hopefully in the next few days, I will not be for a few sessions. So do you mind to share your screen? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I will be mission control today. So I'm sharing my screen, and we'll go into presentation mode so we can turn on closed captioning, and then we will go ahead and jump in. Closed captions should be on. There they are. They're the words on the bottom of the screen. We're ready to go, Suzanne, whenever you're ready.
Oh, all right.
Sorry, Suzanne, before we get started. Maddie, can you actually put those words at the top of your screen? Would that be okay? I don't want them to get cut off by our little video corner. Oh, never mind. It's working now. We're good. Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry.
All right. So we have talked through today quite a bit about the essential resources for planning and design in NTI. And so this, again, is just the purpose statement that the curriculum's frameworks have common design principles and provide guidance aligned to the standards that are moving forward our vision for racial equity and deeper learning. And so this is where we begin with the what we're going to be teaching. And so we're going to dig in a little bit on what are those design elements and how we need to conceptualize that in NTI. So these are the cross-cutting design principles that you'll find in our curriculum frameworks that we are ensuring equitable and culturally responsible experiences for all students. And in our iterations of our frameworks, we are really working hard and partnering with our DEP colleagues to ensure that we are moving toward a more anti-racist pedagogy. And then we are also ensuring that we have a more cohesive framework for standards-based instruction. So all of those modules are designed around bundles of standards that are intimately connected with our success skills. We have a flexible framework for teacher implementation. So the curriculum frameworks do not provide a prescription for curriculum and instruction. Rather, they offer pathways. So collaborative teams can choose a compelling question or choose a direction that they want to take and develop a unit that is the best fit for their context and their students. We offer high quality resources for planning classroom instruction. We know that materials matter, and we know that a major equity concern that we have is that not all students get access to high quality materials, tasks, texts, and so forth. And so a big piece of equity and anti-racism is ensuring access to the highest quality resources across and within schools. And then all of our frameworks provide guidance and support for PBLs, for connections to deeper learning, transfer to community, and more personalized pathways so that students can become agents of their own learning. And of course, those curriculum frameworks can be found in all disciplines in the teacher backpack.
In addition to the teacher backpack, you can also find the curriculum and instructional frameworks on our CDLI website. You can also find overviews of the design principles and how a teacher might use these tools in their learning designs on the digital learning channel as well. So there are multiple pathways for teachers to access this tool. So as Suzanne talked about our curriculum frameworks and the design principles, we have some NTI design principles and questions for us to consider as we're developing learning experiences that are largely virtual for our kids, at least for the time being. And so we want to keep these design questions at the heart of what we're doing, so that we provide high quality learning experiences for our learners, but that we're also keeping learners at the center. And so the very first question that we want to put on the table as we're designing these experiences is, how can I increase learner agency? How can I, as a teacher, create opportunities for learners to have power over the decisions that are made regarding their path to learning and their demonstrations of learning? When possible, coaching conversations are great ways to do this. Learner profiles, there's lots of ways to keep learner agency intact and even increase that learner agency in a virtual context. The next design question that we'd like to go over is, how can I use what I know about learners to develop engaging lessons? Now, last year and in many years past, we've had plenty of face-to-face, in-person time to get to know our learners and build relationships, and then leverage those relationships to develop lessons and engage these learners. Though we don't have that luxury in the way that it's existed in the past, there's still ways for us to get to know learners. So as Suzanne will talk about establishing procedures and really laying the groundwork for your learning experiences later on in the presentation, we'd also encourage you to use the first days of school to develop relationships with kids. And something that Suzanne said in our last session that really stuck with me is that procedures and protocols especially democratize the classroom so that all voices can be heard. And what we want to do is make sure that we have those protocols in place in the first few days of school, but that we're also taking time to get to know learners during the first few days so that we can use that knowledge in our learning designs. Next, how might I ensure choice in the way a learner demonstrates learning and growth? We want to make sure that deeper learning is at the core of what we're doing, and ensuring that every learner gets to choose the way that they show learning that's best for them is one of the ways to get to that deeper learning. It's also an equity piece. We know that all learners are not created equal, and not all learners have the same opportunities, same strengths, or same areas of growth. And so offering learners a multitude of choices in the ways that they demonstrate learning will definitely help us get to deeper learning, but also get to equity as well, as we honor the different parts of a learning profile. I know most people on this call have bachelor's and master's degrees, so I'm not going to read the entire slide to everyone, but considering these questions, especially these top three, are really, really important. Two more that I'll just touch on. How can I make access predictable and sharing information to students? I touch on this because JCPS issued a survey at the conclusion of NTI 1.0, and there was a clear correlation between learners who felt successful and learners who indicated that expectations were clear. So making clear expectations, sharing those expectations in a predictable way to take the guesswork out of it is a huge part of making sure that learners feel successful. Anything to add, Suzanne, before we press on?
No, I don't think so. Joe, you go ahead.
Joe is here.
Hi everyone. My apologies for being a tad bit late. I just wanted to add that as we're thinking about these questions in terms of the learner, we always talk about our 4P planning, with the fourth P being person, that we want to make sure that we're thinking with our our racial equity lens and that we're being culturally responsive. I know there are a lot of questions in the chat about what happened to the R training. We'll get that information for when that's rescheduled for you. But I love that that's where your mind is, that you're thinking about the racial equity component. And as you're thinking of these questions for consideration when looking at our curriculum frameworks or planning for learning experiences or assessments, they all lend to thinking about things in terms of who is the person that is part of this learning experience and making sure that they are respected and valued in that process. So I just wanted to put that in the air before we moved on.
So all of our curriculum frameworks do provide some guidance around assessment. So we offer scaffolded formative performance tasks and summative performance tasks and transfer tasks. And so here's just an example from Module 3 for ELA Grade 8. And what you'll see here are how those standards that are prioritized and bundled together in this unit sort of build across the formative tasks, bundle into the summative, and then are a part of that transfer process where students are taking their learning to a context outside of the academic context. And so we just wanted to share an example of how we have provided some examples and guidance of assessment in the curriculum frameworks. And then Maddie is going to go on and share about how after collaborative teams have sort of begun planning and they're using their backward design at the unit level with standards deconstruction, they've determined the what using the curriculum frameworks. Then what are the ways in which we can provide student feedback and those success criteria? And we're going to talk a little bit about the power of single point rubrics as they connect to a holistic design using our curriculum frameworks.
So Suzanne is right. We're going to talk about single point rubrics, but first, the impetus for this conversation. Like a lot of the design principles that we talked about in contextualizing our district tools within NTI, a lot of that work started with feedback. And the feedback that we got from stakeholders when that survey was issued after the conclusion of NTI 1.0, the feedback was very clear about what we already talked about, which is that there was a correlation between clear expectations and feelings of success. But there was also a lot of feedback around feedback, that learners that had access to continuous specific feedback felt more successful. And we know that's true from a variety of research studies. So our impetus today is talking about feedback, but we also are talking about how to improve and strengthen our grading and assessment ecosystem while shifting into an NTI context. And one of the tools that we love to do this is the single point rubric. We love it because it's simple, we love it because it's succinct, and it's standards based. It helps teachers shift away from giving feedback that is task based, like on a homework or a worksheet or a project even, and shift towards giving feedback on the standard skill or competency that task was designed to elicit. And so if we look at the graphics here, just talking about the architecture of the single point rubric, on the left side in the pink, we have our standards. In each box, you have a different standard. And then in the blue, we have the performance criteria for this standard. So it's really important to note here that while the standard is pretty specific and performance-based, nearly all of the standards are meant to be performed, if not all of them. But the raw language of the standard in itself might not be performance criteria. In fact, most of the time it won't. And so in the MET column is where teachers, especially in PLCs, to have those collaborative planning conversations, want to identify what that performance criteria might look like. And so process-wise, as a PLC is rallying around a task and getting really clear and consistent around what it looks like to master a standard, this is where we capture that information, right here in the middle in the MET column. Now, that's where the PLC or the teacher's work stops for now, pauses, I guess, not stops, in relation to the rubric. We leave the not yet column and the exceeding column open, and here's why. These are the places for us to provide descriptive feedback. So if I'm the teacher and my PLC and I have worked together to develop this rubric for a task, in fact, we used this task on the previous slide, while I'm grading Suzanne or Joe's work, I will look for these performance descriptors. Now, if Joe has not yet met the standard, I will write in the not yet box exactly where she has fallen short, so she has clear, specific, descriptive, and actionable feedback as she continues in her learning journey. Oppositely, if Suzanne has exceeded the performance criteria, this is a place for me as the teacher to document exactly how that happened so that Suzanne can continue those learning behaviors. And she knows exactly what it was that took her beyond that standard. And so just kind of an overview, that's the way that we use the single point rubric. Either the learners met the criteria or they didn't. And we leave these spaces to the left and to the right of the performance criteria open so that we're able to give descriptive feedback on how a learner might work towards meeting the standard or might continue to work at exceeding that standard.
And so one thing that we talked about in our last session that I also wanted to call out here is how the multidimensionality of the standard functions with regard to the indicator in the center. And so in our ELA standards, we know that the purple level, the analytical dimension, is the grade level dimension, right? And so it's always pointing toward analysis. And so what we want to take is that grade level dimension, and that becomes the indicator for the performance in the center. And so I think I really like that we're pulling together the single point rubric with our curriculum frameworks. And we just talked about standards deconstruction because I think what we're really getting at here is that, for example, determining the author's perspective, while it may be a scaffold in the eighth grade, does not an eighth grade performance make for this standard. And so we may need to teach that as a scaffold and offer some think alouds and maybe some modeling about how we annotate and deconstruct a text to get that perspective. But ultimately, the eighth grade performance with an eighth grade text needs to have that analysis portion where the student is clearly articulating multiple authors' perspectives in relation to the other texts and authors. And so I'm really excited about the possibilities for these single point rubrics as they connect to the multidimensionality and the ELA standards for getting at more robust performances and tasks for students.
All right, anything else on the single point rubric before we move on, co-pilots?
I know one thing that Joe mentioned earlier was that the student performing the entirety of the standard was a really important piece. And so I just wanted to bring that out too, that as we engage in these rubrics and we're talking with students about them, that teachers are seeing the entirety of the standard and how those concepts connect to one another. And Maddie, when you were talking about that instructional piece you were just sharing, I was thinking about the possibilities of having the bundled standards, the performance task, and an exemplar, and then having the students tease out what the indicators might be, right? And so that the students are articulating in their own language what that quality work should look like. So I think there's a lot of possibilities for this tool.
That is like the utmost wonderful use of this tool is to bring learners into crafting it with you. And if a teacher or a group of learners isn't ready for that yet, we hope that by a point in a learning journey, all learners have the opportunity to really own the work in that way. But presenting the single point rubric to the learners as early in the learning process as possible is really best case scenario, because this single point rubric is specific enough that learners are able to know exactly what they need to do to meet the criteria and can reflect throughout the process on their own growth towards that criteria. Great point, Suzanne. Now, if you're out there thinking, but I already have these beautiful Google spreadsheets, they're task-based, or we already have our PLC systems in place in terms of analyzing data, and it isn't standards-based, not to worry. Our district is purchasing or has purchased Mastery Connect. If schools don't have access to that, they will very soon. And again, that access will be for everyone, K to 12. And if you haven't heard of Mastery Connect, again, not to worry. There will be some introductory trainings happening later this week, I believe on Thursday at 12:30, 1 o'clock, and 1:30. So you've got 3 opportunities this week to dive into this tool. And this is just that. It's a tool that teachers can use in order to plan, assess, and analyze standards-based tasks and assessments. They use it to inform instruction, to pivot once instruction has happened. If we see that there are some learners that still have some areas of growth, but where we really see a lot of power coming from this tool is in PLC conversations. I think once teachers get further into using this tool, they will find that a lot of things that teachers were doing, this technology does for you. And so really just maximizes what a group of teachers can get completed during a PLC, and really deepens the data that you can use to make instructional decisions. Some of our favorite aspects of this tool is that you can build your own rubrics within the Mastery Connect system and grade directly on those rubrics. Even single point like the ones we just went over. But another piece of this that gives teachers a lot of autonomy and creative control is the assessment bank. Now, Mastery Connect will come with an assessment bank for teachers to build assessments, but we can be cake eaters and cake havers, teachers, because we can upload our own assessments that we build ourselves, that we build with our PLCs, or that are district common assessments, but we can also build assessments using the building blocks of the assessment bank within Mastery Connect. We can also pin resources to standards. So if we have a group of learners that have not met or have exceeded a certain standard, and we have a really great resource that we want to tie to that standard for future instructional use, we can pin it and associate it with that standard to make future planning and future content curation even easier. And maybe the most powerful piece of this is that there's a student portal. So learners can set goals, learners can look at their data standard by standard and really own that information and own their pathway to learning. And parents can see that too. Just real quick, so you know it's here, we've embedded a few screenshots of Mastery Connect, just so you can see what it looks like and get the, kind of down and dirty before the trainings this Thursday. This is the tracker where you have your learners and all of your data by standard. You can color code and group them by unit if you'd like, but you can kind of get a feel for how this tracker works here and how it's great for PLC conversations. There's multiple ways to build assessments. It works with GradeCam. There's 30 plus types of question types. So we're not talking about being restricted to multiple choice questions, which is amazing. We can go far above and beyond that, which is what we want to do anyway. But we can also disaggregate the data in pretty much any way we choose. We can look at learning by standard. We can look at learning by class, or by a number of identifiers. So we can really manipulate the data in a number of ways. And then again, one of my favorite parts is we can build and assess on rubrics right in the technology. So again, this link is embedded in our kind of main slide deck here, if you wanted to just look at a few pieces before the trainings that happen this Thursday. And then Suzanne did a great job of contextualizing this within our larger conversation in our earlier session. And I just wanted to kind of volunteer Suzanne to make sure she does that again right now.
And so we just wanted to make sure that all of the pieces are connecting in our minds in terms of how we leverage these essential resources. And so again, we're beginning with our curriculum frameworks, which are found in the teacher backpack. for that planning, that backward design around the what. And then we shared some questions with you to help you begin considering how you're going to structure and organize your digital classrooms around that what. And then those assessments that your PLCs have identified as performances of those standards that you've bundled together in your planning, you can load those rubrics, those success criteria, those assessments into Mastery Connect to give students that descriptive feedback, and then also use that data, both quantitative and qualitative, to inform your instruction all along the way in that unit of study that you've planned using the JCPS curriculum frameworks.
In addition to Mastery Connect, we are offering a variety of other tools to support you in planning and designing instructional experiences. We have our fan favorite 4P, beginning with the end in mind planning template that's linked in. Our math and ELA backwards planning documents, again, beginning with the end in mind. But one thing we really want to highlight, because it's fairly new, is the affirming racial equity tool that DEP developed. And this just helps us make sure that the learning designs, the cultures, or the classroom cultures rather, that we are building and designing affirm racial equity and perpetuate our commitment to an anti-racist curriculum. Anything to add, co-pilots?
I would add that when you click on that link for the Affirming Racial Equity tool, DEP has created a one-page R tool for NTI. So it's really easy to use, and I hope everyone will use it, because again, as we're designing with the student in mind and considering who that person is, that's part of this process, we need to be thinking about that all the way through the process of planning as well.
So all of those tools, again, are linked into this slide deck, and this slide deck is or will be very soon linked into the JCPS digital learning menu for your access and use. And then Suzanne, did you want to touch on our next steps at all?
Yes, and so our next steps, as we shared with in our last presentation around standards deconstruction, is that we'll be giving some support around interdisciplinary planning and standards deconstruction and interdisciplinary choice boards upcoming. And then I know Joe and Maddie have been working really hard with some enterprising teachers around creating standards-based and or pretty similar competency-based progressions. And so this is kind of our next steps for this work. Just to let you know what's coming in terms of professional learning and supports.
I know we're at the beginning of using a lot of these things. These are our next steps, but I would encourage you to continue to check out all of the offerings on the JCPS Digital Learning channel. We do have some scheduled learning sessions around all of these things for this week and in the coming weeks as well. And that is our conclusion of our curriculum frameworks. We'll be talking about the instructional frameworks shortly if you'd like to stay tuned for that.
Just real quickly, Maddie, we had someone in the chat ask when they would be able to get access to log in to Mastery Connect. And while we don't have a set date for that, the initial PD is this Thursday, and you may get additional information about logging in at that point. If not, it will probably be early next week would be my guess.
Alrighty. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat. So very briefly, while we wait for 3 o'clock to start so you can talk about your instructional frameworks, remember, these sessions will all be broken down and put on our YouTube channel for you to view later. So we will make sure that we upload this one rather than the one from earlier because there were fewer hiccups. We'll just blame that on Jack Bosley. It's fine. Coming up next, you guys are going to talk about the instructional frameworks, correct?
Yes, that's right. And how to connect them with the core tools for NTI 2.0 to deliver our instructional frameworks in our workshop in a really authentic and engaging way to develop learning communities.
All right, well, that's great. Well, we're excited to go ahead and round this out. Do you guys need to take like a little water break or anything? Or are you good to just power on through?
I think we can keep going.
Yeah, let's power through.
Let's rock it out.
Do you need to do like another introduction, Matt?
I could. Yeah, so joining us at the 3 o'clock hour, let's take a look at our schedule. We have Suzanne Kramer, Maddie Shepard, and Joe McKim talking to us about JCPS instructional frameworks. So, ladies, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. If you are just joining us, we're going to jump into talking about the instructional frameworks in our new NTI context. We just finished up our session on the curriculum frameworks, which you should be able to check out on the Learning channel very shortly. But with that being said, we will go ahead and jump in. I will share my screen and then turn on closed captioning, and then we will be ready to hop to it. All right, do we see words on the bottom of the screen? We do. Okay, we're in business. Suzanne or Joe, whoever wants to get started with our NPR style session today.
So we're just sharing again the why, as Joe so always eloquently addresses. So the purpose of our instructional frameworks is really to provide cohesive structure to guide teachers in best practices of instruction for the discipline. And today we're going to really dissect how we might take these elements from a time-bound class period and deliver them in a way that's engaging for students digitally. And so that's kind of our objective today. And we hope that you'll leave with some tools and some thinking about really intentionally using digital tools to get at the learning goals that we have for students.
Just a note about where you can find these tools. All of our curriculum and instructional frameworks are linked inside our JCPS teacher backpacks. Additionally, you can find them on the CDLI Google website. And then you can also find overviews and introductions as to how to use these frameworks in your learning designs on the JCPS Digital Learning channel. And then there are a variety of embedded links, such as this one, as well, where you can find these resources. So there's a multitude of ways for teachers to access these resources.
And so on this screen, you'll just see an example of our elementary math and secondary ELA frameworks. And what you'll see is the consistency, even across disciplines, of the opening routines, the guide and engage, the explore and apply, and then the synthesis and closure. And what you'll see is different structures and different ways of getting at those middle sections, but there's a lot of similarities in the workshop as it cuts across content areas. And so when we were sharing our 5 basic tools, I know Andrea talked about that middle section for building conceptual understanding through small groups and learning stations and other sort of math talk driven activities. And so we just wanted to call out sort of the components of the workshop, regardless of discipline. We have those structures. They just occur, and we use different tools to get at the disciplinary thinking that we're wanting students to engage in each framework. And so this slide, this is sort of what Maddie and Joe and I were brainstorming about, how we take the elements of the instructional framework and how do we capture that in a virtual setting, because we don't have a 70-minute class period to do our math workshop or our literacy workshop. And so what are those structures that we need to have in place? And then particularly a lot of the workshop lives in that center portion, which is the predictable digital routines. And so Maddie, if you want to click on the title of that slide, I pulled together some generic sorts of questions around strategic planning for digital instruction that this specifically connects to ELA. And so just know that I'm sharing these with you, but there may be differences in your discipline if you're a band teacher or you're a social studies teacher or a math teacher. But here you'll see the larger sort of organization and structural aspects of our digital classrooms that we need to have in place probably by those first days of school to ensure that we're off to the right start. And so part of our elements of the workshop, that core instruction, feedback loops, exemplars, independent reading, that lives at the structural level in ELA, for example. But some of the components of the workshop live at the digital routines level, which are those dialogical protocols and routines that we want to begin engaging students intentionally in those first days of school. And so just like Maddie said before, we really need to think about how our synchronous meets are going to engage students in the dialogue of the discipline around texts, and that protocols can be really engaging and also democratize the classroom so that we're elevating student voice rather than teacher voice. And so here you can see some other aspects of our workshop, which is one-to-one conferring, small groups, and an essential component of all of these pieces is the predictability and consistency that students need in a digital environment across a week or across a unit of instruction. So they know where to access, when to access, and how to engage using those NTI core tools and using perhaps protocols or in conferring or small groups. And so Maddie, if you want to click on that protocols link.
Sure. And while I am, I would just emphasize one of the messages here, which is that if we get these protocols and routines in place, then that removes a barrier to learning for kids. Then kids can focus on, the meat of what it is that the learning design is designed to teach them or have them practice or have them show learning through. And so having those protocols and routines in place is really foundational to our learning designs. And while that last document was engineered with ELA teachers in mind, so much of this is universal. Protocols for dialogue. We have dialogue in every single class. Thinking about leveraging digital reading. Literacy is a part of all of our curriculums. Personalizing learning for students and offering choice. Ongoing feedback. These are universal design questions. So again, this document was engineered for ELA teachers in mind, but it is linked into the slide deck, and you'll find that a lot of this speaks to a lot of classrooms and is pretty universal. Sorry to interrupt, Suzanne.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. And I think this portion about tasks is really important. And when I originally engaged in a conversation about this, that was really pushed forward by our wonderful math colleagues, I kind of realized that I need to rethink tasks. Like, we're not just talking about summative and formative tasks, academic tasks, or progress against standard sorts of tasks in NTI, that many of the tasks that happen organically or things such as introducing new material or engaging with our content in the classroom that happen organically because of our physical structure, we have to be really intentional in creating those same structures digitally. So students need to be taught how they're going to access new material in a predictable way, how they will access the curated content that you want them to read or engage with in a predictable way. How will we communicate if kids need help or support? How will we communicate with families? How will we assess progress? How will students perform synthesis and composition? And so what you'll see here are those core instructional resources, our learning management system, and the digital tools sort of aligned to those tasks that exist in a digital environment that have to be planned for intentionally. And we've linked in our 2.0 teacher toolkit here as well. And then finally, down here, particularly for ELA, we know that we may have some strategic places where we want students to engage in active conversation and dialogue around a text or around one another's writing. And so over to the left, you'll see some pretty common dialogical strategies here, such as jigsaw, gallery walk, Socratic seminars. And if you click on the link, it'll take you to Better Lesson, which will outline step-by-step how to implement that strategy virtually. And so what you'll see after you expand that portion is a Socratic seminar for digital learning. Steps 1, step 2, step 3, and then there's also some videos. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this is a step-by-step implementation. We in JCPS are going to use our core digital tools for this. And so Maddie, if you'll go back to that protocol, what you'll see is that with the digital Socratic seminar, you can do that with a Google Doc and a Google Meet. You can do that with Google Slides or a Jamboard and Google Meet. And so what we really want to remember is that we want to offer these protocols. We could do this in small groups. We could do this in large groups. There are some ways we could do this asynchronously and synchronously, but we want to offer these opportunities for students to engage with one another and engage with text and with content. And we just want to be sure that our learning goal is driving the strategy and driving the tool. The tech is not driving the learning, but our learning goal is driving the tech, and that we need to be choosing from those core tools that our district has approved and are linked in the teacher toolkit for NTI. And I've listed those there as some possible pairings for how teachers might get at that learning using our NTI approved core digital tools.
Just want to reiterate what Suzanne just said, because I don't think it can be said enough, which is that this document was designed extremely thoughtfully and intentionally with all of our learning purposes and our learning tasks on the left. That's where we should start in terms of design. Once we know that we want to integrate one of these tasks or one of these components into our learning design, then and only then do we start to look for a tool to accomplish that goal. We don't start with tools first and then, figure out a task to do with it. We start with the tasks and the purposes first. And I'll also say, just to keep in mind, and get this, one of my favorite, the word escapes me, not platforms, something you say all the time, and soapbox, one of my favorite soapboxes, is that we need to make sure we're designing for as many opportunities for creation over consumption. Learners will need to consume. They will need to watch videos. There will be content out there that they need to consume. But as many opportunities as we can to create for learners to create, to show learning, to be active participants in their learning. And many of these tasks and these tools allow for that to happen. So just wanted to reiterate that we start with the purpose and the task on the left, and then we look for one of those core tools to accomplish that task within our learning design. Sorry to interrupt, Suzanne.
No, that's perfect. I think just to pull this together, if you want to go back to the presentation, to that slide, that our instructional framework, the workshop model, it lives at different levels and across time in a virtual learning environment. So we are no longer bound by 55 minutes and a single moment with our students, which in some ways can be really liberating, but in some ways can be scary. But in order to capture that guide and engage, that independent practice, the conferring, the small groups, all of those pieces that are essential to engaging kids in best practices that are connected to our instructional framework, we have to be thinking about the layers of organization, structure, and routine in our digital classrooms. And so hopefully we've kind of brought that together to you and maybe changed the way in which we're kind of thinking about it from a moment or a moment in time to how we capture these engagement pieces really intentionally at different levels and across time. And that if you think through these things in the next couple of weeks and establish these protocols and establish these digital routines in the first 10 days of school, the ways in which we want kids to engage in content in a predictable way, then the next 5 weeks or next 4 weeks of school will be really smooth sailing, because kids will know how to engage and will be ready to have those dialogues and produce that kind of work that will get us to our vision for deeper learning.
Yeah, so hi, Joe McKim again. I would just add that while we're doing this, we are the professionals choosing what that purpose is and deciding on what those tech tools are going to be. But we also want to always keep in mind that learner, that person, and what are they bringing to the table? What is the best tool for them? May not be the best tool that we want to use. And we need to keep in mind who they are. And that goes back to our tool, and making sure that we're conscious of where they're coming from and what their resources are. And some of them, especially with some of our tiniest students, they may be struggling with having any kind of conversation with another human being, let alone doing that virtually. So we have to keep in mind where our students are as we start to build these tools and protocols into our daily lives and learning experiences for kids. Let them be a part of that, bring their voice in, and let them be part of that design process to make sure we're meeting their needs.
Suzanne, you're muted.
Oh, well, I knew I was going to do that at some point today. My apologies. Where do the frameworks support the implementation of the instructional core? And so, of course, we have the student at the center, the curriculum frameworks at the top there. We talked about assessment, intentionally designed performance tasks that we can grab from the frameworks, modify for our context, and then use Mastery Connect to share those dollops of descriptive feedback that are actionable, that we know are so important for driving student learning. And then just the last few minutes, we've talked about how we are going to build and enact those digital structures for implementing our instructional framework. And so I think that we have captured all of those elements of the instructional core, and we've even brought in those important elements of equity and anti-racism, and how we are planning for and engaging students in driving their own learning and moving toward a more equitable pedagogy. And so I think this graphic really brings it all together to help us see the coherence among systems and the drivers of our vision, and how we're going to implement this instructional core. And of course, all of the tools that we've referenced in this presentation can be found in the teacher backpack, and professional learning will be provided on an ongoing basis with the Power of Pause on our JCPS digital learning channel.
And just to add on to what Suzanne is saying in terms of the continued support around this instructional core, there will be more trainings from the CDLI department around assessment, around designing rubrics, around standards and curriculum and instructional frameworks. And we're here to support you in that way, but you can also reach out to any of us, and we'd love to co-design and co-develop with you. And help in any way that we can. So thanks for joining us. And unless we have some questions or things to discuss from the chat, that is our conclusion. Do we have anything in the chat?
Sorry, no, it doesn't look like we do. I was responding to a question about PD. Sorry about that. No, I don't think we have any questions for you all in there. So thank you for doing this twice today. You guys liked it so much, you did it again. So.
And, as we finish up, I'd just like to, again, remind everyone this slide deck will be linked into the digital learning channel menu if it isn't already. Embedded in the slide deck are tons of resources, some of which we've gone through today. And then just make sure you're tuned in to the offerings later this week. Around assessment, around our new tool, Mastery Connect. Those will be great supports as we continue to imagine what implementation of the instructional core in an NTI context might look like.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies. We appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for coming back so that way we can get this full session going. To everybody who tuned in today, thank you so much for being here. Let's go take a look at the schedule for tomorrow. Remember, everything can be found on the teacher toolkit at jcps.me/NTI. Tomorrow, we're going to start at 11 a.m. with Russ Hockenberry and Jack Bosley talking about Google Classroom for instructional design. Tomorrow is our NTI 2.0 Recommended Core Digital Tools Day. So we'll be talking about all those major tools, so Google Classroom, Google Meet, Screencastify, Jamboard, and Read and Write. And it'll be the digital innovation team, plus some other friends. I'm talking to you about that tomorrow. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you for continuing to get up and turn your computer on every morning and do things that no educators ever had to do before. We truly, truly appreciate you and all the pioneering that you are doing. So thank you for being with us, and let us know if you have any questions as we end our stream today, and we'll see you tomorrow.